The Great Flood in Chinese mythology. Watery chaos is a common theme in many creation and recreation myths, including the Great Flood, which has been recounted by numerous civilizations and religions. One notable flood myth in Chinese mythology is the Yu Great Flood. Yu the Great, or Yu the Engineer, was a legendary king in ancient China who was famed for the first successful state efforts at flood control. His establishment of the Xia dynasty, which inaugurated dynastic rule in China, and his upright moral character. The story of Emperor Yu, the legendary founder of China's first dynasty, centers on his ability to drain persistent floodwaters from lowland areas, bringing order to the land. This ancient flood story centers on the triumph of human ingenuity and labor over the chaotic forces of the natural world. Various myths, or versions of myths, specify that Yu received help from various sources, which helped him to succeed in controlling the Great Flood. Hebo, the god of the Yellow River, is supposed to have provided Yu with a map of the river and its surroundings, which helped him make his plans. The mythical Emperor Yao, throwing up his hands in despair at the cruelties of nature. It was sometime toward the close of the 3rd millennium BC, and for 2 generations chaos had become the norm. All rivers between the Yellow River and the Yangtze had risen from their banks, ravaging the land in an unprecedented event enshrined as the Great Flood in Chinese legend. But out of chaos came order when Yao's successor appointed a man named Yu to solve the problem. Like the Xia dynasty he founded, Yu the Great, he who controls the waters, is a figure shackled to unprovable myth. You'll never get a definite answer. Although his name is first mentioned during the Zhou dynasty, this was hundreds of years after his own lifetime, c. 2123-2025 BC. All sources were written at least 2,000 years later, during the Han dynasty. Dozens of cities in China lay claim to being his birthplace. The Yu Great Flood. During the reign of Emperor Yao, a devastating flood began. Seeking a solution, Yao consulted his advisors, the Four Mountains, who recommended his distant cousin Gun to control the flood. Gun attempted to manage the flood by stealing shirang, a self-expanding soil from the supreme deity, to build dams and embankments. Despite his efforts, the structures failed to hold the water. After 9 years of continuous flooding, Emperor Yao resigned in shame and appointed Shun, another distant relative, as co-emperor. Shun reorganized the kingdom to better address the flooding, but Gun still couldn't stop the rising waters. For years later, Gun was banished, and his son Yu took over. Yu succeeded where his father failed by implementing effective drainage systems. His efforts eventually controlled the flood, highlighting his ability to achieve what Gun couldn't. The Tale of the Yellow Emperor. Another version of the myth dates the Great Flood to the Xia dynasty, 2205 to 2197 BCE, during the reign of the Yellow Emperor. In this account, the Yellow Emperor possessed magical dirt that could soak up water. Gun, the emperor's grandson, stole the dirt to help the people, but his efforts failed, and he was executed by the fire god Zurong. Yu, Gun's son, pledged loyalty to the Yellow Emperor and asked for the magic dirt. The emperor, pleased, gave him the dirt and instructed him to enlist the help of a tortoise and a dragon. With their assistance, Yu routed river waters to the sea, dug canals and tunnels, constructed dams, and formed lakes, eventually controlling the flood. The He Miao myth. The Miao people have an oral tradition of the flood, without written records. In their version, thunder, with a bad disposition, caused the flood, leaving only 2 survivors. Unlike other accounts, this version focuses on the survivors rather than humanity as a whole. Unique aspects of Chinese flood myths. Chinese flood myths, except for the Miao account, do not portray the flood as a punishment from an almighty being for disobedience, unlike many other cultures' flood myths. Instead, the flood was seen as a natural disaster, albeit with involvement from demigods and mythical creatures. The heroic efforts to mitigate the disaster and the ultimate betterment of mankind through the knowledge gained are common themes. This unique perspective challenges the notion of floods as divine retribution and emphasizes the positive outcomes from overcoming such catastrophes. If you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel.